Let me explain the day in the life of an average teenager nowadays. They can wake up, scroll through 2 hours of TikTok before even getting out of bed, and then they can wake up to and eat a nice McDonald's hearty meal with a lot of calories, a lot of fat. And after that, they can play video games for another 6 hours, right? They can play, I don't know, Tycoon Simulator. And then after that, right, they feel like they're satisfied with that, and then they can hop on some pornography and watch it for 1 hour, you know. And then after that, they can go back to watching TikTok, watching some Netflix, eating some popcorn while they're at it, and go to sleep, right? And this lifestyle nowadays, right, although I said it kind of grotesquely, is shockingly normal in our culture. And it's normal to a point where I think it's really beneficial to step back and just realize how toxic and why it's toxic of the overconsumption we have nowadays. So when we think about the prehistoric hunter and gatherer tribes, their lives were completely oriented off achieving the intrinsic and primal instincts of humans to get food, to get water, to repopulate, and entertain and socialize with each other, you know. And nowadays, what took our prehistoric ancestors their whole life to achieve endlessly, we can get like the click of a button, the click of a button, or just like yelling "mom, meow, mom," you know, and that's unbelievable how easy we have our hands on it now. Our ancestors, their reward circuitry was programmed, right, to push themselves to get these items. They had to work hours on end in the forest as hunters and gatherers to get food for the night's meal. And by the time they got that meal, it was because they had their dopamine motivating them to get the food and bring it back, and then they had the other surge of pleasurable chemicals telling them this was the right thing to do, this is good. Good that you've done it, right? And that keeps them in the cycle of keeping themselves motivated, keep on doing that over and over again. But nowadays, look at where we're at. We open our phone and we can get a surge of dopamine and entertainment by just moving our fingers, giving our brains endless hits of dopamine and all this stuff, making our tolerance and making our constant for what our reward circuitry needs to be all the way up here. Now, all the other things in life are all banal. They're all boring in contrast, right? Going outside is boring. Going to play sports is boring. Going to find a girl to talk to is now boring, you know? Like the things that we need to survive are now boring because of the overconsumption of just that one thing, the TikTok scrolling. But you know what's the worst of all? I'm not gonna talk about the food either because I think the food is quite self-explanatory. You're just pumping all these high dense calorie fat foods in your face and you're getting yourself rewarded off that. That's its own thing. But I think something that's heavily under talked about is pornography. And it's really needs to be addressed because it's such a huge issue. I think it's probably the worst drug. Or not. No, sorry, that was too far. But it's a drug that is really bad enough to really need to be talked about as much as like I think alcohol is, because at a few clicks of a button you can mess with your circuitry at such a primal way that it does devastating damage. Right? In the old days, your reward circuitry motivated you to find a woman to repopulate, right? And that gave you incentive to talk out, to socialize, to work on yourself, to show your skills to women, right? But nowadays, we just click 3 buttons, type in a few words, and we already have access to this whole web of things that activate that final chemical rush of sexual desire and our final rush to sexually populate someone, you know? Like in the old days, even if there was a chance to see that many like sexual objects in one place, it would be extremely beneficial for the person to actually go through with that, get their sympathetic nervous system up to a part where their adrenaline's rushing through and like spread his genes, right? But nowadays, if you do that, and do it to the scale we're doing it every day, we're watching these many people, we are putting extreme stress and putting a lot of and just putting so much work into our limbic system, our work circuitry, to get all these chemicals out that are making ourselves feel really, really good at the expense of crushing our body's ability to cope with it. You know, in the old days, even if that happened, the example I showed, that would be probably at most like one time a day, and they would feel tired afterwards, right? But now it's good for them because it was really worthwhile to pay off. I mean, it's really worthwhile to do what he did. But nowadays, you do that, you didn't earn anything, and now you feel like shit because your parasympathetic nervous system is taking all its effort to rehabilitate yourself and to bring back your entire body to its normal state of homeostasis. And that's a lot of effort to do on a daily basis, especially if you're a constant user. And it's not just that. It's the idea I said about the constant too. You're setting this constant for these sexual things to be all the way up here now. And the mundane things I talked about earlier, like going to talk to a girl, trying to work on yourself, trying to take care of yourself, trying to do anything that relates to anything that could be sexually attractive, will be just eradicated immediately. And the direct use of porn affects that extremely. And I hope you guys can understand that from the explanation. And I think this is just something that's so untalked about nowadays. And people are so big about not talking about pornography because I think that the idea of sex itself is something that's extremely private. And, bringing in this idea of like self-pleasure with this idea of sex, this is like putting two private things together in one, which just makes it something that's really hard to talk about, but it's at the same time making it something really hard to talk about, and something that's really detrimental at the same time makes it so that people are very unaware of the damage that it actually does. And there are plenty of videos on YouTube that I think talk about the uses of pornography and how it affects you, and I think it's really worthwhile for people to really understand how that works. I plan to do maybe some more videos and maybe like a whole playlist about like evolutionary intrinsic desires versus our current modern day desires. But this is a topic that intrigues me because it's just so untalked about, but overall so influential on our lives today. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comment and stuff like that. Thank you guys for watching.